Ladies and gentlemen, you've made it to the home straight. This is our last live interview from Singapore. Following this interview, we've got about another hour and a half of content for you to enjoy on the other stage. But we've left the best for last, if you don't mind me saying so, Steve. So some high standards to look up for. Steve Morley joins us here. He is Director of FHS International and Asia Pacific for Fitbit at Google now. Congratulations on the acquisition, Steve, on the new family. How are things with you anyway? How are things generally?
Oh, it's been a challenging 15 months in terms of, you know, how we've all had to run our lives and our work. Probably the toughest 15 months of my adult professional life in terms of the amount of change. I used to travel, I think the last 3 years, my average travel a year was maybe 180 days out of Singapore. And my phone tells me my sort of route, and I haven't been more than 10 kilometres from the apartment. So, yeah, big changes. Tough year.
How have you kept up your own mental health and your own physical well-being across this? It's not been easy, but of course, when you are working with an international company, a pan-regional team, where do the hours go? How do you keep up with your mental health and physical well-being?
In some ways, I've been able to, with some discipline, probably live healthier than travelling 180 days a year. I made a commitment to focus on 3 things within a couple of weeks of the lockdown. We're very used to video conferencing. I've got commercial reporting offices on the west coast of the US, early morning, Dublin, late afternoon, early evening. So I knew how straining running the business would be on video. You can do it. I think all of us have proved that. But yeah, the 3 commitments I made was that I would walk aggressively every day 5 kilometres, and I've been really good on that. I also focused a lot on my sleep, trying to get consistent patterns, live the old adage of early to bed, early to rise.
Yep.
And the third thing from prior experience on what video conferencing can do to you was I try and take at least 15 minutes of every hour to do something nothing to do with being on a video or a screen, and ideally not on phone calls talking about work, just chill out for 15 minutes, an hour. And therefore I think I'm in more, if I look back on my history on my Fitbit app, I am getting more sleep, I am getting more exercise, my resting heart rate and vitals have come down over the 15 months. But it's still exhausting, so I'm not saying everything's perfect, but those are the 3 things I focused on. And I think probably the most important 2 for me was sleep and the regular breaks, just to keep things level.
Did you find that you've got a good sleep duration that works for you, Steve, if you don't mind me asking? Are you a 5 hours a night? Are you an 8 hours a night guy?
I'm trying to get 7.5, which is more than sort of a benchmark for someone of my vintage. I think anything near 7 for someone in their 50s is reckoned to be good. So I'm trying to do that, but because at Fitbit we're pulling apart sleep to a much more granular level, it's trying to get the amount of REM and deep sleep in balance or at the right level. Duration's the easy thing. The tough things, if you follow English football, are a regular, consistent bedtime. You know, so you can build up a better circadian rhythm, 1, and 2, you know, having enough exercise such that The deep and REM sleep are in balance. So I'm getting quite esoteric with it. And yeah, the easy thing is the duration. The tougher thing is getting those other things in balance. But I find the exercise and the sleep regularity, 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock, if you can get that type of rhythm going, you can actually really impact things. So yeah.
7.5 hours it is.
Doing okay. 7 hours, 26 minutes last week. So.
Good going.
Yeah.
Now you're in a very advantageous position, Steve. Your data will show to a wider degree the health and well-being of many, many people across the Asia-Pacific region. Having looked at this data, maybe done some analysis and pulled some conclusions, what has this pandemic done to the health and wellness of people across Asia Pacific?
It was even surprised us. So we anonymise and aggregate at aggregate level, looked at the world actually, almost the entire base of users. In Asia specifically, first off, wasn't a surprise. The average amount of activity, or steps if you like, that Asians were taking dropped 17% compared to prior samples. So that sort of didn't surprise me. Lots of countries in lockdowns. We did 2 pulses, one in the first quarter as people were going into lockdown, and one later in the year as people were coming out. The next finding was a positive one because it's something Asia's normally towards the bottom of our sort of global benchmarks, but sleep went up.
Good.
For instance, Japan users started to get 13% more sleep, and in the Philippines nearly 30% more sleep. So less activity, more sleep. And the third metric, and we'll talk about this as we go through, but the impact of these holistic health measures, the third impact was that resting heart rates fell. So less activity but better sleep resulted in an improved resting heart rate across Asia. So, and I personally felt the swings were greater than I personally was expecting. So, yeah, Interesting stuff.
We'll get through to this later. Let's look at wearables. I suppose the initial birthplace of wearables was to measure fitness and then wellness, health, and now even infectious disease. The capabilities, the utilizations are growing and growing and growing. What is next for the wearable space, Steve, in terms of the benefits it can provide, the spaces it can fill? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's 2 streams. The innovation that the industry, Fitbit included, is driving with new sensors allows us to measure more and therefore help people. We on Fitbit Sense, which is our last smartwatch release, Q4 last year, we introduced a new sensor that allows us to measure stress over a longitudinal period, sensing the sweat changes. And that helps people manage something that we've all had in the last 15 minutes, stress. So new sensors and an application of those in wearables will drive new things that we can measure and new things that we can affect behaviour change on. The other innovation, even if there were no new sensors, it's this movement that I think has grown exponentially during the pandemic. People recognising that health is a holistic thing. It's not about whether you're on the Esplanade doing a 10k run every morning. It is about what we're talking about. Am I getting good sleep, good nutrition? is life in balance. Because if you improve one thing, if I get better sleep, maybe that will happen when the football season ends. If I get better sleep, I feel better to go and take my exercise. If I get better exercise, I feel better to get better sleep, right? If I eat well and don't snack, I'm likely to feel better. And they're all interlinked. And personally, as you've heard just now, for me, my passion is the sleep side. It's just foundational to all the other pillars. And that's what we're focused on things that affect cardiovascular health, activity, sleep, nutrition, stress, bringing new sensors to market to enable us to help our users adopt healthy habits, change behaviour, and just this recognition of connecting those dots on holistic health. We've been on that sort of pivot away from fitness for a number of years now. And I think what the pandemic did was just drive awareness of the value of that through the roof. On the pandemic itself, in March, we launched, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we launched a study with Scripps and Stanford in the US. And they ran the research and basically established that with the health biomarkers that we measure, things like heart rate variability, breathing rate, SpO2, when you combine those things, we can see correlated trends that can actually predict a few days before the onset of symptoms that someone's suffering COVID, influenza type diseases. And to augment that, we're rapidly working hard. You have to do these things beyond a research study. So in May, we launched a COVID app to our users in America and Canada, and 100,000 people signed up. 1,000 of those have registered as having COVID, and the team are now fine-tuning the algorithms so we can really bring that to bear. There's been positive things. We accelerated those feature sets because of the circumstance that was happening around the world, and I think it's going to add tremendous value going forward.
Let's look at, I suppose, the current status quo with many governments, Steve. They've been so occupied, or preoccupied, should I say, with safety promotion, the promotion of sanitisation, hygiene, which as a result has maybe produced a lot of isolation. Now, a lot of governments coming out the back of this are now turning to health promotion, which is really exciting to see. Singapore government's had a long history of health promotion across its population. Fitbit have had great track record in building some really unique partnerships with the Singapore government. When you are looking at partnerships now with the wider health ecosystem, both in terms of government and in terms of healthcare providers, how important are those partnerships going to be in the future, and how can we optimize those?
So at Fitbit, we've had a small but dedicated team, of which I'm a part, focused on our health solutions business. And that's a fast-growing part of our business. It might be with governments, like some of the things we've done here in Singapore, because they own the health system here in Singapore, and they're super innovative and they're investing, and it's been tremendous here. But beyond, if you look at other marketplaces, it's the insurers that are really managing the health system. We're passionate, and we've got a small dedicated team in Europe, US, and Asia that are dedicated on serving those verticals, whether it's insurance, government, companies and organisations. Insurers and organisations are quite homogenous. Health systems by market are not. But we're passionate about population health. and we know that the deployment of Fitbit at population scale and then anonymized data and behavior change programs that our devices can deliver inform health systems or insurers to improve or lower costs of providing healthcare. I think wearables will play a massive part going forward in the provision of population health programs at real scale. Yeah. I mean, the devices are affordable. The biomarkers that we're able to collect are hugely valuable. And the opportunity to help more people, which is our mission, we want the world to be a healthier place, has really been amplified during the pandemic. You know, if some of the things we're hoping to bring with the testing and fine-tuning of algorithms on COVID had been available pre-COVID, you know, we could have helped even more. Yeah. But I think infectious diseases, influenza-like diseases, if you listen to, you know, health experts around the world, they're here to stay. So I think working with health systems, working with insurers, working with organisations, you know, simple things like in the US, we've got a return to work option for American employers. Okay. So people can check their vitals and see whether or not they're at risk of having something and therefore shouldn't return to the office. So providing solutions like that to employers adds value as well. So, yeah.
I think that's always been a challenge for maybe the traditional fitness industry, where they have a really captive, engaging member base that they can provide great solutions to. Maybe the health market has a really captive audience, but how do you unlock, for example, the 50% of consumers linked to insurance companies, linked to government health community centres? These people we don't often touch with this kind of technology. Love to see how that progresses, Steve, in the coming years, and what more news you've got to share there. Let's look at mindfulness. Let's look at stress management, because of course Fitbit Sense and Fitbit Lux, these are some of the features that you're now trying to adopt into these platforms. Why are these so important today, and how are you building that capability in?
Well, if you think about, you know, the value of the platform and ecosystem we have, is you have something on your wrist that becomes part of your everyday life, doesn't need charging from weekend to weekend, so it's not a pain to wear. And by adding a new sensor that allows us to deliver longitudinal tracking of stress. So what happens if we think about the other biomarkers? People realise, I ate too late, I didn't sleep well. There's a connection there. I exercised too late, I didn't sleep well. The same connections can start to be had where you see your stress score, because we simplify it, a number of measures and across 4 metrics to come up with one score, so it's in a digestible form. Why is my stress score going up presently? You know, the cogs were, it's either work, or if it isn't work, is it a lifestyle choice that I'm making? And we connect that very heavily with mindfulness in general, which is a whole movement in itself, and proven to be of great value to people. You know, in Singapore, so we launched a premium service for our users, which is behind the paywall. If you pay us a small amount a month on top of the free app, we'll give you much more insight. We'll measure more for you. will give you nudges and encouragement. And it's very rich in content. And here in Singapore, one of the more popular applications for mindfulness, because each country is a little bit different, was MindFi. So Singaporean users on Fitbit Premium, measuring and using MindFi, measuring using our stress application and using MindFi content to help them manage that. Similar partnerships in Japan because the content landscape there is different. So again, it's this holistic approach, the whole of someone's fitness and health. We talk about fit for the mind fit.
Yes.
Yeah. And that holistic approach to health and not a pure focus, as we were talking earlier, on fitness, is the direction the company's gone in, because it supports our mission of helping people to be healthy.
Now, you touched on Fitbit Premium, which is a fantastic platform. What's coming up for users in Asia Pacific in the next 12 months? What's coming up to look out for?
Well, there'll be devices, and we've just launched, you mentioned it, Fitbit Luxe, announced it. It's not on the shelves yet, but that's a really elegant form factor device. It's tracker format, but our most elegant device to date. We think it'll be popular with our female customers. But it's sort of jam-packed with features that to date have only really been in our smartwatch portfolio.
Yeah.
So we're bringing, for instance, the stress capability to Fitbit Luxe as well. I can't go beyond what else is coming, but with this audience in the health and fitness industry, we're super keen to work with anybody who wants to provide content that's specific and localized and adds value to our users on our premium service. So we've got a team that are focused on partnerships to augment that, to localize and make the content we're offering more relevant.
Yeah. I'll consider that an open invitation, ladies and gentlemen. Closing question, Steve. Let's look at it from a macro bird's eye point of view, looking over the world at the moment in time. There's 101 trends that you could look at from across the world, whether they are consumer, technology, industry focused. What trends are you following at the moment, either from a business perspective or personal perspective? What are you following, and what do you think is going to happen with those?
The normal stuff is innovation in the category, from a hardware perspective or a software perspective. But the one word that's sort of overarching for me at the moment is probably virtual. A lot of your audience will be the fitness side of the industry, and there's been a lot of innovation there, right? Virtual workouts, different ways of exercising. Whole new categories growing up with global communities. That I find super interesting. How, again, amplified and heightened and maybe accelerated by the difficulties of the last 15 months, but virtual. If I put my health hat on, two things I think exploded in interest terms during COVID. One was the deployment of wearables, but another was sort of remote patient care. Okay. So again, the theme is virtual. Yes. How do we do this stuff in a different way that's probably going to be more effective and more efficient going forward? So, terrible time for the world, but there's been some really good things, acceleration of things like that. So they're the things that I'm watching really closely. That virtual would be the one word answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking incredibly exciting marketplace for us to all be working in, ladies and gentlemen. What's going to come out now by Fitbit, by Google? Look forward to seeing the new platforms, the new features. Look forward to seeing them across Asia Pacific more and more as they're building out their relationships across a whole multitude of sectors. Steve, thank you for the interview, very much appreciated that, and look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thanks for having me, Ross.